Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. Today we're going to build an Adirondack Loveseat. If it's as popular as the piece that inspired it, it will become one of our all-time favorites. I'll show you how to build it next, right here in the new Yankee Workshop.
The new Yankee Workshop features the craftsmanship of Norm Abram.
If you saw the program about 12 years ago, you would have seen us build these Adirondack chairs. Now, the inspiration came from a visit to a museum in the Adirondacks where they had several different versions, and from a piece that I brought to the shop that was built by my father when I was a child. Most of the time those pieces were built out of pine and they were painted, so they were a maintenance issue. We decided to build ours out of cypress, and even though these pieces have been sitting out on the lawn for 12 years, there's very little deterioration where they're in contact with the ground. So one thing is clear, we'll be using cypress again. In terms of the design that I came up with, that's not going to change very much. Curved seat, curved backrest, and a nice broad flat armrest where you can set your drink down. However, I think we can make some improvements in the fastening system. On this original, I used nails to attach the slats and occasionally some screws. They bleed through and they rust and they get loose. So I think this time we'll use adhesive and we'll use screws that will drill in and cover with plugs. On the major connections we used carriage bolts, and as you can see, even though they were called rust resistant, they've totally rusted, so I think we'll switch those to stainless steel. With those improvements in mind, let's build an Adirondack Loveseat. And here it is, the Adirondack Loveseat. Plenty of room for two people to sit comfortably. Just like the original, it's built out of cypress, and as you can see, no fasteners are visible. They're all hidden behind these plugs. And where I had to use bolts, we're using stainless steel. If you'd like to build your version of the Adirondack Loveseat, a measure drawing is available with the materials list, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. I want to get started today working on the legs. There's a vertical leg and an angled leg. We'll make the angled leg first. It's a very important piece. It carries half the weight of the seat. It's a place to attach the front leg. It carries the seat slats, as well as this cross piece to which I attach the back slats. Over the years, we've sent out thousands of plans for the Adirondack chair. Many of you have emailed us or sent us letters asking, how do I take a scale drawing and make a full-size pattern? It's an important task for woodworkers, and it's not that difficult. The first thing you need is a grid. So you can either go to an architectural supply house and buy pre-printed paper which has 1-inch squares on it, or you can lay out your own on a piece of poster board. Once you have the blank grid, you can start the layout. So here I'm going to start with this point, about 1 1/4 squares in. So I plot a point. I know the measurement along the bottom, so I measure from the first point, 29 3/8 inches in this case, and put another point at this end. If there are angles, as there are in this one, I can use an adjustable protractor, set the angle, and draw the line. Once the straight lines are complete, I can start working on the curve. It starts right here. You can see our point came right on that part of the grid. The next one, just above. The next one, a little more than 1/4 of the way, and so forth. Once you connect those dots, you have a full-size pattern, which you can cut out and transfer it to your stock, or better yet, make a pattern out of 1/4-inch plywood, which you'll have forever around the shop. Now I'm going to use some 1 1/16 inch stock for those angled legs, and I've already laid out the first one. Now we're ready to cut it. Okay, 24 degrees. That's the angle of the first cut at the front of the leg. And we'll just trim that off. However, before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. I'll finish cutting the piece here at the bandsaw, and I'm going to leave the line so that I can sand it smooth at my drum sander. Because the Loveseat is twice as wide as an Adirondack chair, I need some intermediate supports for the seat slats. The techniques that I use are the same as those for the angled leg. Let's take another look at the prototype. I need to make some dados. One in the angled leg to pick up the back stretcher, and then 2 dados in the back stretcher, 2 dados in the front stretcher to pick up the supports. Here's the layout for the dado in that angled leg, and it's slightly wider than I can set up my dado, so it'll take a couple passes. Okay, let's check the fit. That's going to be good. Now, here's something done easier now than when the piece is assembled. On the angled leg, I want to round the bottom edges, around the back of the foot, and up to where this cross piece intersects. I'll leave the seat slat area square. The front leg is just a straight piece with all 4 edges and the bottom rounded over. And the front cross piece gets the lower edge rounded over. To do that, I'm going to use my router, which I've set up with what is called a 1/4 inch radius roundover bit. I've laid out the location of all my screws, and I'm drilling a through hole with a 3/8 inch counterbore. Now for something that we didn't have 12 years ago, or if it was available, I was unaware of it. Marine adhesive sealant. We learned about this while we were doing a project in Nantucket. It's meant for boats, so it's great for outdoor use, and believe me, once it cures, the piece will not come apart. Now, where do you get it? If you can't find it at your local home center, you will find it at a marine service center. Now, you don't want to get this on your hands. Use only as much as you need, just a little bit, and then put it together, because if it gets on your hands, you'll never get it off. Some 2.5 inch screws will secure it until the adhesive sets. Okay, and here's the second intermediate seat support. Now this is the front stretcher, some adhesive, and a few screws. Now this connection between the vertical leg and the angled part of the leg is one of the more critical joints. So once again, I'm applying some of the marine adhesive. Now I have to line this up perfectly. So I've put a mark on the back side of the leg, which has to be even with the front stretcher, and I also want to make sure that it's even to the face, and then I'll clamp it in place. I'll now drive 1 screw into that front stretcher, and then I want to check the measurement from the back of the angled leg to the front of the vertical leg. That has to be exactly 31 3/4, and that's good. So now I'm ready to drill some 1/4 inch through holes for the stainless steel carriage bolts. Now the carriage bolt, flat washer, and a nut. Okay, with that one socked down, I can remove the clamp and drill for the second bolt. Now I'll just repeat the process on the other end. Okay, well that takes care of this part of the assembly. The next thing I want to do is make these little brackets which support the armrests. I've got some blanks laid out. I'll cut them at the bandsaw, smooth them up at the drum sander. I've pre-drilled a couple holes for the screws to attach the bracket. Put a little bit more of that marine adhesive on the back edge. Line it up with my marks and attach it with the screws. Now I want to round over the top edges of each armrest. To do that, I'm going to use a 3/8 inch roundover bit. If I simply place the router on the stock, the bit will hit my workbench. So to solve that problem, here's a tip. Just take a few scraps, put them underneath the piece. Now you have plenty of clearance. Well, now I'm ready to attach each armrest. I've put some indicator marks on the underside and a little more of that adhesive on top of the leg and the bracket. So I get it in place and secure it with some screws. Okay, get this position. The next piece I want to work on is this long piece across the back that connects the armrest, and it also is a place for the backrest slats to rest. Now let me bring down the template from the Adirondack chair to show you what's going on. If I were to cut this piece at 90 degrees, the slats would hit the top corner, but there'd be a big gap at the bottom. I want full support so that I have plenty of room for the adhesive and for my fasteners. What I can do now is take this template, lay it on my blank, which is 5/4 stock, because after all it is a wide chair and it's going to need a lot of support. I set it down, trace the arc. There's a flat spot in the middle for the centerpiece, and trace it again on this side as well as the end. The end cut is 90 degrees. The slope is 30 degrees. This bandsaw has a very convenient feature. I can tip the table to the 30 degrees that I want. Now to smooth out the cuts. Fortunately, my oscillating spindle sander also has a feature where I can tip the table to 30 degrees and then do the sanding. Now here's a tip. I want to keep the contact with the drum right at the center of the table. If I were to go around too far to one side, it changes the angle. The only place it's 30 is directly off the center. Now I want to attach this piece to the underside of the armrest. I've put an indicator mark on each end, which shows me the inside edge of the armrest, and it will also show me where I can put the adhesive. Now I slip the piece under, bring it even to the back, and clamp it. All right, a couple 1/4-inch holes. Now once again, stainless steel carriage bolts are available at your local boatyard. Well, it's beginning to start looking like a love seat. Now there's one thing I want to do, which is to prop up the back edge of these armrests as the glue cures. That'll make sure that it's perfectly flat. And before I leave tonight, I want to start filling some of these counterbores. Let me show you how I do that. I use what's called a plug cutter. And I simply use scrap bits of stock to make the plugs. Now it's just a matter of taking a screwdriver and popping them loose. Now, once I have them out of the blank, a little bit of glue. Now here I'm using a exterior grade carpenter's glue, which will be fine for these plugs. Take a brush and spread it around the edge. And I like to align the grain of the wood. I think it looks a lot better. So get it started in the hole. Tap it in with the mallet. And I won't trim it off or make it flush until the glue dries. Well, good morning. As promised, the glue on the bungs cured overnight. Now I can use this small saw to trim off the bulk of the excess, and then I'll just use a sander to finish them off. Let's take another look at the prototype, and I'll show you the piece that I want to work on next. It's this cross piece to which I attach the backrest slats. I've taken a piece of 1x6 and laid out the shape. Now this piece is actually going to yield two pieces, the cross piece as well as this back seat slat, which is also curved. Now I want to show you the original Adirondack and a place that I can make an improvement. On the original, I cut that cross piece 90 degrees to the surface. And as you can see where this slat comes down, there's a gap at the bottom edge. I want to close that up. I can do that by tipping my bandsaw to 6 degrees when I make the cut. When I built the Adirondack chair 12 years ago, we didn't have this sander. I had a drum in my drill press, and for these bevels, I had to do them freehand. This works a lot better. Okay, once again, some more of that marine adhesive. Set the piece in place and attach it with some screws. Now I'm going to plug these holes as soon as I drive the screws. So I won't be able to get at them once I put the slats on the back. Well, now we're ready to make the backrest slats. The plan will include some grids with the pattern, the cuts at the top, as well as the overall length. Let's make up a couple sets. Here's some stock for one set of slats, all laid out from the patterns. I'll cut the shape at the bandsaw, smooth them at the drum sander. There are 3 different lengths for the 3 different shapes. We'll trim them at the miter box. Well, let's round over some edges on those slats. I like to use these rubber mats when I route pieces like that. It stops them from sliding around. It's important that I make matched pairs here. I want a left and a right, another left. I'm only going to route the edge on the face side. So I'll stack them up, and then I'll round them over using a 1/4 inch radius rounding over bit. Before I actually start installing the slats, it makes sense to pre-drill the holes at the bottom edge. With some marine adhesive applied, I'm going to start with the center slat. And I have an indicator mark at the top and at the bottom. We'll set it in place and attach it with a screw. Now for the outer slats. The plan tells me that I want to start in 1 3/4 inches to the outside edge. There's my mark. Put the slat on that mark, tip it out till it just comes against the armrest, put a couple pencil marks so I know where to put the adhesive, and install it the same way I did the center slat. The intermediate slats are just spaced between the ones that are already installed, just centered by eye. Okay, now that leaves just one large slat right in the middle. Once again by eye, I line it up. And now, before we go any further, let's fill the holes. Now for the seat slats. A little more of that marine adhesive. 3/4 inch stock with the top edges rounded over with a 1/4 inch radius. This first piece overhangs the front by 1/4 inch. Now I have some little bits of scrap, which I'm going to use as a spacer, a little more than 5/16 inch between each piece. Now this is a little bit like laying a porch floor. We want to leave a place for the water to get out and for the air to circulate. And finally, the back slat, which was the remainder from when I cut this back cross piece. We'll attach this, plug the holes, sand it down, and this piece will be ready for some finish. Now we could leave this cypress natural like we did with the original Adirondack chair and just let it gently weather to a gray color. But this time we decided that we'd try to keep it looking a little more new. So I'm applying a oil and alkyd resin. It'll help repel the water and snow that might sit on it. It has a UV inhibitor, so it'll have less damage from sunlight. Now, one coat will do it for now, with occasional maintenance as needed. Well, if this Adirondack Loveseat is as popular as our old Adirondack chair, thousands of you will be building one.